I welcome you at the Patent Analytics Global Think Tank session. I'm excited to moderate such a great event. We have patent analytics experts here all over the world. Japan, Singapore, China, Germany, France, Switzerland, and the United States of America. I have arranged countries in time zone order. It is a late evening in Japan, and it is an early morning in the US. Our session will be held in the form of Q&A. We avoid traditional presentations and switch to debates forum. So we have debaters here, not speakers. Other important point that we put into the focus is the underrated area of patent analytics implementation. This area is science, technology, and innovation policy making, governance, and management, especially technology management. Corporate implementations of patent analytics, and by that I mean systemic projects from A to Z, is somehow hidden for public discussion. But from my point of view, it's the most valuable, the most impactful form of patent analytics, corporate analytics. Today we are going to slightly open the curtain and discuss various scenarios close linked to goals and objectives of corporate technology management. Debaters are welcome to share their thoughts, ideas, knowledge, and expertise related to patent analytics implementation for that subject, innovation policy making, technology management, etc. Today we have a large number of high qualified specialists as our debaters. We are very happy and proud to welcome you all here, even in a distant format. But we hope such conferences we will hold on a regular basis, and when all pandemic events will no longer exist, we could face face-to-face in the real world. So without further ado, let me warmly introduce our debaters in alphabetical order. Jin-Kuan Huang, the head of patent analytics, IPOS International Singapore. Welcome, Jin-Kuan. Yuya Kajikawa, professor, the University of Tokyo, Institute for Future Initiatives, Tokyo Institute of Technology, School of Environment and Society, Japan. Welcome, Yuya. Irene Kitsara, IP Information Officer, Technology and Innovation Support Division, IP for Innovators Department, IP and Innovators Ecosystem Sector, World Intellectual Property Organization, Switzerland. Welcome, Irene. Cyril Mavre, Director for Engineering Sciences Business Unit, Castel Consulting, France. Welcome, Cyril. Marco Richter, Managing Director, Intellectual Property Solutions, LexisNexis Patent Site, Germany. Welcome, Marco. Anthony Tripp, Managing Director, Patent Informatics LLC, USA. Welcome, Tony. Wan Lei, Associate Professor, Intellectual Property Development Research Center of China National Intellectual Property Administration, China. Welcome, Lei. Our session is divided into 5 parts according to the number of objectives related to technology management. Each part involves speeches of debaters complemented by short presentations. The 5 parts of the session are: first one, new application areas and diversification. Second, shaping of emerging technologies and products. Third, go-to-market strategies. Fourth, proper research and development. And final part, valuable insights. The duration of the session is 2 hours and 10 minutes. I kindly ask the debaters to speak no more than 5-6 minutes to be in session schedule. Let's start from the part 1, new application area and diversification. Our experience in corporate patent analytics shows the solid request from companies regarding the diversification. There is a need in information regarding possible new application areas in a timely manner. For example, when one company develops subsea oil production robots, it could be crucially important to it to know whether other companies use similar equipment and technological base, but in producing fun rides. For example, amusing rides for big amusement park, Disneyland, Universal Park, и так далее, etc. Because in this context, it can possibly lead to new application areas. Such information coming in a timely and ongoing manner could essentially enrich the potential of diversification and discover new application areas for companies' products. To discuss this topic, I'm going to call Professor Kadzikawa to share his experience in the topic. Yuya, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you for your introduction. So today I will discuss hidden and estimated application areas. Now, it is a daily activity to visualize the patent landscape. And this is an example of the computer science research in 10 years ago. But in the 10 years ago, we can see GPU is an emerging topic. And now the enterprise value of NVIDIA exceeds that of Intel. So anyone knows the importance of GPU. But it is clear that with patent analytics, such a rising concern on the GPU is clear even in 10 years ago. So the patent analytics is now the powerful tool to discover and extract the hidden technological fields. So, but we must remind that there are different technologies to assess the application areas. So usually patent analytics has three types of analytics. One is a classification-based approach, like the analysis based on IPC. Another is a citation-based approach. The last one is text-based approaches. And advantage and disadvantage of these differ from each to other. And usually, classification-based approach is the most robust analytical tools and to assure the credibility of analyzed results. On the contrary, text-based approaches sometimes produce noisy results because we cannot distinguish the similar terms. And citation-based approach is a middle. And our current approach is to integrate these different ones. After describe the technology and research structure based on the citation network analysis, I introduced in the previous slide, and then we explore hidden connections among these different citation clusters with text similarities to extract the hidden opportunities. Our previous example is automotive and aviation relationships. This research is conducted with a collaboration with Central Research Laboratory of Toyota Motor. And their intention is to explore the opportunities to develop their own technology to aviation sectors, or to import aviation technology to automotive one. And after analyzing the citation network of automotive patents, the technology is like that, and aviation is like that, then analyze the text similarity, we can successfully extract the hidden opportunities how to automobile components can be used in future aviation industry, or automotive company can utilize aviation technologies like the cockpit system for autonomous driving, because the autonomous driving is first adopted in aviation sector, not in automotive sector. So, so there are different types of approaches, but anyway, to use the relevant, to select and use the relevant technology and integrating those are very powerful tools. And another example is the fuel cell and ammonia. And after analyzing this one, we can discover a novel catalysis which can be used in ammonia. Or we can also analyze, these cases are technology and technology relationships. And another promising way is to explore the hidden connection between technology and social issues, to explore the hidden research technology areas and business areas. So that is my experience, and hope this can support our discussion. Thank you.
You face the wide range of patent analytics tasks. When I was visiting you once in Grenoble, I was impressed when you told me about the Castell concept of technology transfer and its practical implementation for the Airbus case, Airbus. Would you perhaps share your thoughts on diversification topic? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Oleg. And indeed, I wanted to speak about this case without having spoken to you before. So yes, patent information is a very powerful tool to identify potential application for an invention. So I will share the methodology we used at Castell to detect potential applications. And there are a lot of similarities with what Mr. Kajikawa just presented. So I will go quite fast on this part. So first, we need to build a patent database related to the given invention thanks to queries, keywords classification, citation trees, but also semantic analysis provided by some tools. And once we have this database, there are several ways to identify potential applications. So directly look, it's a text approach mentioned before, where especially if the database is huge, we can use patent analytics tools that offer this semantic analysis. And those tools are very interesting thanks to their analytics power. And for instance, Orbit Intelligence and other tools can retrieve concepts from database of thousands of patents. So, of course, this is not perfect though, and a manual review is always mandatory to select the applicative concept, gather concept also, which are similar. So there is also the classification approach that has been spoken about before. And there is also a more manual approach, which is more linked to the bibliographic information of patents. And it consists in looking at the applicative areas where operate the assignees. But it requires a manual look at each player's website or an activity to understand the applications which are new. So we can use also the citing and cited patent approach, but more to populate a new database where we'll identify a new patent, because patent often cite other inventions which were made in a different applicative area. So we'll use the same process than before, but with a new database populated differently. And another approach also is to use the bibliographic information again by retrieving, thanks to patent analytics tools, the list of the main inventors having stopped to file a few years ago after fruitful filing years. So we can even focus on the ones which filed impactful invention, for instance, with a citation rate. And then we can check if those inventors have afterwards filed new invention, and if yes, in which field. Because those change of career are rarely completely random, and researchers put their technical skills forward to find a new job, even if it's in a new applicative area. So from our experience, a combination of those different patent analytics approaches work very well to rapidly identify potential application for a new technology. However, I would like to bring a few limitations. First, this patent analytic approach only represents one piece of the puzzle. It's often a very interesting start, but it's not magical, and it needs to be complemented by other approaches as well. For instance, a brainstorming session gathering people from different horizons, technical background, and experiences will enable to complete the potential application. It's also possible to complement the patent analytics approach with internal or external innovation challenges where we'll ask experts to find application for an existing technology. As I mentioned before, another limitation is that after having populated the potential application, a filtering phase is needed, which will consist in checking if the user needs in each application are fulfilled or not with the existing technologies, and if our invention could fulfill those needs. So this requires at least a search for technical, economical information, and if possible, also the identification of experts in each application field for an interview and ask about their needs and the not fulfilled needs. And also the final limitation comes from the initial objective of such hidden application identification. If it's to find new R&D fields or partners, this works very well. However, for licensing purpose, find new application for a technology developed for a different one, meaning with different needs, different specification, it's often a mirage. Not always, but there can be many disappointments thinking we will always find licenses for a technology developed somewhere else. So I will say that the most downstream of the value chain the technology is, the most complicated it will be. And for instance, so I come back to the example cited by Oleg. So we work for the European airplane manufacturer Airbus, which developed a manufacturing process for large pieces of composites for airplanes. And the patent analytics approach enabled to identify application for wind turbine, for sport equipment, for small boats, where it could be interesting. And as the technology was quite upstream of on the value chain, I mean material manufacturing, it appeared very relevant, and the technology has been transferred into those applications. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Oleg. My pleasure. So with the topic of diversification, let me first say that most companies and organizations out there are either looking to diversify or they're being diversified as we speak, if I may say so. If you think about digitalization, for example, disrupting many industries. And opening new opportunities too, right? For existing ones, new players arising, et cetera, et cetera. So if you as an organization want to gain an understanding of your options when it comes to diversification and finding new areas, for example, new potentially successful R&D efforts or application of your existing technologies, one thing that we come across very often is that we need to help these organizations to understand what their own assets and capabilities are. Companies historically have been really good understanding what individual patents and documents they own. They viewed everything on a very granular level. But getting that bird's eye view and zooming out and looking across the entire portfolio, only very few did. And this is not just a matter or function for the IP department and the IP analysts, but it also goes a level higher into the business units and into the top management. Even on the business unit level, I would argue, many do not oversee the entire technological capabilities of the entire company. More often than not, we're surprised by our ability to show individual business units leaders what the other areas in their overall organization and company can contribute and deliver. So my first learning and advice in the area of diversification is understand your own assets and capabilities. And that starts at the granular level, but that's also zoomed out to the overall portfolio level, and create a common understanding from the top management across all business leaders and functions of what the capabilities of the company are. So that's the internal view that you're creating. And then from that internal view, you can then go on and expand your view. You can try to understand your competitive position per technology field or per business unit. Keep in mind that sometimes business units share technological assets and capabilities to bring products to market, right? So it is absolutely worthwhile not only looking at individual technological assets, but also at combined technological assets. And both Cyril and Yuya have talked about very good approaches to do so, to do semantic analysis, to do traditional Boolean searches, citation analysis, to understand what's going on in your technological space, to identify competitor strength, to identify new entrants, and to identify potential trends that are going on. Let me also briefly here touch upon the trend piece. And again, more often than not, a view on the development of patents and patent portfolios can reveal which technologies become more or less important over time. So also, while you're looking for diversification options, you also start to learn what of the assets in your portfolio are not as important anymore. So as you broaden your scope, to the competitive view, you will also start to understand where the gaps are and where the overlaps are of the technologies that can either create areas of strength and focus or areas of opportunity when it comes to the gaps. And then ultimately, you can start to derive decisions, right? As Cyril said, you can apply these insights then to go further into in a potential licensing direction, licensing in, licensing out. You can derive selling decisions, right? Maybe you identify an area of weakness while you're looking for diversification options, and you're starting to sell off assets. And let me come back to my original point about either you are looking for diversification or maybe you're already being diversified under the topic of digitalization. Many of you have seen over the past few years the example that we like to show around disruptive technologies, right? Where by looking at patent information, one was able to see the entrance of Apple, a Silicon Valley player, into the classic watch industry, right? Utilizing patents as a proxy to understand technological developments and opportunities for diversification. One would have seen that that famous Silicon Valley player was getting interested in a traditional watch industry 7-8 years before the first product even hit the market. And if a company is vigilant and observant about what's going on in its technological vicinity, they can spot these opportunities early on and react to them and be an active part of the diversification rather than the disruption / being diversified. Thank you.
Thank you, Marco. I think that's all for part one. It was nice to hear such diverse thoughts on the subject. And so let's go to the product section. Nowadays, technologies change rapidly. Companies are experiencing great difficulty to keep pace with modern times regarding the specification of emerging products. In that case, patent analytics could help by providing invaluable support in specific technology benchmarking based on patent information. The key point here is to gather all relevant technology information not for specific product, but for much broader product group. By taking into account various aspects, brand new features of different products, technology triggers that are shifting focus from one technology to another, etc. We should thoroughly match all technology information we gathered to do the responsible benchmarking and provide recommendations on how to shape their new products that allow to be competitive in a short or a mid-term perspective. I want to introduce my friend, Jin Kuan Huang from IPOS International, Singapore. IPOS International provides the extensive support based on patent analytics to companies in the Eastern Asia region. Jin Kuan, would you please share the expertise of IPOS International on how to define the emerging product specification with the help of patent analytics? Or moreover, maybe how to get top management buy-in to apply patent analytics as an important tool for strategic decision-making? Jin Kuan.
Thank you, Oleg. Yeah, with pleasure. I guess there are many factors or elements that contribute to the success of a new product. For example, a company's marketing strategy, promotional tactics, and a successful product also relies on identifying and targeting the correct segment of the customers, as well as the continual monitoring and evaluation of the effectiveness of a company's marketing and promotional strategy. I won't go into details of this because, first of all, I'm not a marketing expert, and secondly, these are not so much dependent on technologies of the product. I would just want to focus on how patent analytics could help in terms of product differentiation. One of the key strengths of patent analytics is the ability to understand the entire landscape of a particular area or an industry. I think Marco mentioned about bird's eye view. That's actually a spot-on observation. So taking the display technologies for smartphones as an example, one will be able to find all features in current smartphone displays in patent literature. For example, whether it's a display notch or the hole punch or even under-display camera technologies, all can be found in patents. And very often, these features are disclosed in patent literature years before the actual prototypes or products are revealed to the world. So in other words, patent analytics would allow you to understand the big trends that's going to happen in a particular industry or businesses. And this tends to be true for most industries, regardless of the technology pace, whether the technologies are fast-moving or slowly evolving. If you see how emerging technologies start to find their ways into a particular industry, for example, we have seen how platform technologies such as artificial intelligence are being incorporated in finance, healthcare, and transport sectors. And with such information, you will know whether the technologies or the products that you are developing, that you're working on, are in the same direction that the whole industry is moving. And if the answer is yes, that's good. It means that you are not lagging behind the mega trends. And if the answer is no, then you need to ask yourself, is the deviation intentional? Is that something that you want to create as a differentiator from your competitors? And speaking of competitors, patent analytics allow you to monitor your competitors closely. And based on our conversations with different companies and enterprises worldwide, we are aware that many companies have been doing this. They have dedicated teams that look at every new publications from their competitors, so as to understand what technologies their competitors have been working on, and this will allow them to anticipate with good accuracy in terms of the products that will be launched by their competitors. Such information is important because knowing what your competitors are going to do could help you better formulate your own product strategy. And if you want to come up with a product with the same feature, then you need to focus on maybe better performance specifications or better user experience. And if you cannot compete in terms of performance specs, then the company could work on other features that give them a better product differentiation, or maybe focus on other strategies such as pricing and so on. And in terms of the second question, how to get buy-in from the top management, this is a really, really tough question. And to be very honest, we are still trying very hard to figure out how to best do it. We struggled a lot with this when we first started our patent analytic capabilities about 10 years ago. On the one hand, we knew that it's very important to get buy-in from the top management because patent analytics is about making important high-level decisions, such as a company's R&D direction. And such decisions are usually made by the top management. But on the other hand, we found that it was very challenging to get their buy-in. To begin with, many of them may best know patents as a form of intellectual property. They are, however, not so aware that patent information is a rich source of business and technology intelligence. And you don't have all the time in the world to tell them, to teach them the value of patent information because the top management are usually very, very busy. Therefore, it would be best if you could articulate the unique value proposition of patent analytics in a very concise manner. Very often, a good, engaging presentation deck with carefully selected use cases would be helpful. And on top of these basic preparations, it's equally important to do your homework to find out the current situation of your client. It would be much easier to get their buy-in if you could illustrate with solid examples closely relevant to their industry or businesses. And more importantly, you need to show the top management or anyone that you're trying to get their buy-in on how patent analytics could help them. For example, to better understand their industry, to solve some of their problems with data-driven, evidence-based recommendations. And this requires your analysis to go beyond just simple patent statistics, because it's often not enough to tell them who the top players are or the exact number of patent applications in one area. And more importantly, to show them what the number means. What you need to do is actually to translate the numbers into what has happened. And from there, you need to explain further why it happened and what would happen next in the near future, and how your client can be better prepared for the near future. So far, this approach has worked very well for us, and I hope it will be a good reference to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jinquan. I want to ask Dr. Wan Lei. Lei, I know that China and Chinese Patent Office have strong support in the field of proper analysis of patent information. Would you please do some overview of such activities? Lei?
Yeah.
Lei, we couldn't hear you. Lei, we couldn't hear you. It was good check or sound check and smoke test. Could you please start your presentation? So, dear committee, I will switch debaters' order. Could you please close the presentation of Lei? And I want to ask Yuya. Yuya, it was my pleasure to hear that you and your colleagues have realized there are plenty of corporate projects related to what we in the project office FIPS call the domain-specific patent landscapes. I know that you are not using such name, but the essence is the same. Would you please give us thoughts on how to...
So I prepared one slide to support the discussion. So could you stop the sharing? Okay, thanks.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, okay. So my answer to gain the buy-in by top management, I have the three factors. So the first one is, of course, analytical capacity of the patent analyst. And it also includes the databases, not only the patent database, but also the scientific papers and business deals, newspapers, and so on. And in the analytical capacity, of course, the prerequisite is we can offer the credible analysis to decision makers, but not limited to it. More important one is the saliency of the solutions. We can provide the salient solution to decision makers or not. And it depends not only on the data science, but also depends on our expertise in each technology and business fields and insights to gain derive the recommendation from the analytical results. So I have engaged in several consultancy and advisory jobs, the Japanese enterprises and also Japan government. And some of our analysis are bought by the top management team, but in another case, it is not. So the additional factors, important factor is, one is organizational protocol of decision making. And the previous literature on intelligent circle teach us the important one is the direction of the intelligence. So if intelligence researchers surveyed by themselves and reported to decision maker, it is sometimes not accepted. If it matches with their thought, it is bought, but if this is a negative results or includes some risk, they can reject the results. So the intelligent circle must start from the requirement by users, the decision makers, based on their perceptions. And so one of the important factor in addition to analytical capacity is these types of organizational protocol of analysis and decision making. Another one is absorptive capacity of business units, not only the top management. So so even when they agree with our results, even so after providing and circulating the results in their companies, so it sometimes we face some difficulties. So the absorptive capacity of product and business development units are also, of course, an important one. So some of my answer seem to already answered by Marco and Cyril in the previous part. But anyway, in my experience, I stressed these three factors. Thanks.
Thank you, Yuya. We have connection with Dr. Van Leeuwen. Lei, the floor is yours.
So can you hear me now? I'm so sorry about the technical problem before. Yes, I'm so sorry about that. I would like to give an example. Yes. Yes. In 2021, April 26th, that is Intellectual Property Day all over the world. And that day, we released a report about the 6G generation telecommunication. We know that telecommunication is booming developed in recent years in China. So that is definitely a quick development technology field. So how can we, in this report, we analyze the 4 branch of the 6G communication technology, the terahertz technology, integration of satellites, terrestrial networks, deterministic network technology, and AI-based air interface technology. So from this technology, we can know the technology diversion of the 6G communication. And I think patent analysis is very important. It's depend on the different characters of industrial field. A different field is totally different. The telecommunication industry has a special feature, character. That is a lot of technology parts can lead to the same technology goal, but every party need to fix and coordinate by the internet telecommunication international standard. So that is very important to decide which road we will select it. So that is a single technology. Orbital analog momentum, OEM technology, in the terahertz technology. So in this exercise, we make a metro of the two dimensions of OEM technology to decide which one is advantage. That is a complex word. Advantage, which one is the advantage path? We select it, and so that is depend on the patent analysis to form the new product. So that is the example I want to share here. Thank you so much, and sorry again for the technology problem. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lei. I want to thank all of you for this session, and further on, let us move to the markets. This is the name of this part is go-to-market strategies. This is the most commercially focused part of all here today, and I think we all definitely had many projects where the customer requires the full accompaniment of technology transfer that starts from the revealing of technologies with huge and high commercialization perspectives and ends with well-elaborated recommendations targeted on any given market. The idea is that patent contains various business-oriented data that should be effectively mapped on strategies of commercialization of modern companies. For sure, such analysis should be adopted to different industries and different company size. And I'm very glad that Irene Kitsara from the World Intellectual Property Organization is also participating in our discussion. Irene is carrying out impactful patent analytics projects in WIPO, and these projects cover the most emerging and disruptive technology trends, artificial intelligence, assistive technologies, and other. These projects are publicly available on the WIPO portal. Dear Irene, would you please comment on how you consider the aspects related to prospective markets in your research studies?
Strategies, which is typically not what we are looking at in the WIPO technology trends, yet we are discussing through this process with a lot of companies involved and who are ranked on our reports. And so typically the patent analytics side is linked to the phases up to prototyping. And when we consider the innovation and product development life cycle, analytics are not typically involved in the go-to-market strategy part. Nevertheless, we do believe that analytics can assist also in the design and optimization of this part and the related risk management. We see that at the stage when we're talking about the go-to-market strategy, products are already defined. So patent analytics is not anymore contributing to the technology side of things, but it may support the questions of where and when to launch. So in this way, through tracking changes, it can help define markets and the different market share dynamics, which may put at risk an expected return on investment and impact the market strategy. So when we're talking about identifying emerging or promising markets to launch a product, some new filings or weak signals in our data sets in new jurisdictions, either by competitors of a company or others, may already give an indication that it would be interesting to embark on these markets. And what we find is that business and other information, as I will also allude in the other presentation, such as collaboration agreements, investments, acquisitions, or even policies in certain markets, may impact the decisions to embark onto emerging or promising markets. If we just think about, for instance, the biodegradable straws and the ban of plastic straws in different markets, putting into practice this kind of regulations and policies impacts the decision of technology providers and producers of such products into the markets where we see these regulations. Then what is interesting noting throughout the process that may take a long time from ideation to the go-to-market are changes in the behavior of known competitors. So we may observe in analytics filings increases or decreases, the differences in portfolio breadth and patent protection locations changing. Then, of course, with a caveat, because in certain cases where we see global product markets, we may have a certain patent filing pattern which may not be 100% aligned to where the markets where certain products will feed into. Then the differentiation between filing trends and active portfolios or the abandoning of patents of certain companies may give a hint about whether they're considering leaving certain market segments at all. And additional complementary information such as M&As or news statements can facilitate decisions about how the situation is with given players. New players, the outliers in a game, what we mentioned, what we heard before, could also be interested looking at their profiles and the technology, see do they offer alternative to one company's product to launch approach or some super disruptive approaches. This could mean that, and similarly in the technology analysis, are there emerging applications or cutting edge technologies now which may be linked with these new players? As a result, there is a possibility to launch earlier on a product into the market to maximize the return of investment. If we see, for instance, there is from the patent analysis that we would expect to see sooner than later a product which will disrupt the existing market share and price and redefine the market dynamics. The challenge that we see is that patent analytics tends to be very often like as a sequential rather than an iterative approach. So often there will be these discussions with the R&D teams and with the IP management teams, but there is sometimes a disconnect from the business and corporate strategy. So by the time this reaches the market strategies, the patent analytics teams will not, from what we have observed, be consulted at this point in time, whereas within it could be extremely valuable even in this time. We always need to bear in mind, of course, the unknown unknowns, so highly disruptive products or products which have a short innovation cycle. And in this case, the publication of the related patent information may follow the actual product launch. So these are risks and caveats that companies will have to lead with. A good practice, we believe, is an involvement of the analytics teams throughout the process, exchange with R&D subject matter and market experts to validate the hypotheses and assumptions that may come up through patent analytics, and a monitoring in the background of weak signals, not just in the phase of go-to-market, but throughout, and overall emerging trends, which could have good applications in the area of technology in question. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene. Jinquan, is there some specifics related to market assessment in your projects? And if so, how do you deal with the this valuable business perspective of patent information. Jin Kuan.
Hi, yeah. A go-to-market strategy, I think, involves many key elements, such as a good understanding of the needs of the customers, your ideal markets and their competitive landscape, your distribution channels, and that's where you need to ask yourself whether your product is market intensive. Again, not all these questions can be answered by patent analytics, but patent analytics can be a very useful tool to understand the competitive landscape. So by performing thorough patent landscape analysis of a particular jurisdiction, one can understand who's in the market or who's interested in operating in that market. Using Singapore as an example, when we examine the patent filings in Singapore, say, for example, in the area of financial technologies, what we found is that Singapore is a highly competitive market flooded with patent filings from major e-commerce companies, financial institutions around the world. And if you are a fintech company and you intend to expand your operation into Singapore, it's very important to ask yourself, are you ready for the high level of competition? We have seen cases where a particular industry or businesses, or maybe a business sector in the market is so competitive that it's very challenging for newcomers to survive. So in this case, patent analytics could really give you a good sense of the competition. So this is actually maybe in the opposite end of what Irene has mentioned as weak signals, because these are strong signals that you are going to face a high level of competition if there are lots of patent filings in that particular area. And if the decision is to yes, you want to compete, then you need to ask yourself, what's your value proposition? In other words, you need to understand what others are doing. And patent information could be a good source in this case because the patent filings will contain details of your competitors' technologies or their products. And when a company decides to go into a particular market, knowing the competitive landscape will shape also their corresponding patenting strategy. For example, are they well protected enough to operate or even sell their current product? Have they secured enough protection that could allow them to expand their existing product lines? Recently, we have helped a big multinational company in elevators who's actually looking at using millimeter wave technologies for elevators. And through patent analytics, we are able to advise them not only in terms of what they should do next to consolidate their leadership in millimeter wave technologies for elevators, but also in terms of how they could expand their current technology portfolio to go beyond elevators to other areas such as smart buildings, focusing on intelligent lighting, security, and energy consumption. So indeed, patent analytics could be a very powerful tool. Thank you.
Thank you, Jin Kuan. Lei, I change the order of debaters to let you have a breath between your speeches.
Yes,
so, yes, so would you please give us your vision, and maybe you could specify the practice that you have regarding the market-oriented patent analytics. Thank you.
Yes, so thank you. I also want to give a case. That the case is about the One Belt and One Road initiative of China. China began the One Belt and One Road initiative in 2013. So China want to invite more than 70 countries and organizations from Asia to Europe. So go-to-market strategy is really important for the One Belt, One Road. So we do the patent analysis to see what kinds of American company applicate what kinds of patents in Indonesia, and what kinds of Japanese companies applicate what kinds of patents in Indonesia, and what is the European Union companies applicate what kinds of patents in Indonesia. So that is a very good suggestion to Chinese company. So let us know what kinds of Chinese company have opportunities in the market and the potential opportunity. So the benchmark company the patent behavior is really important, and to have a Chinese company to make a go-to market make a market strategy. So that is my share. Thank you.
Thank you, Lei. Thank you all. I think it was a great discussion, especially considering the importance of business aspects that are hidden in patent information, and we should reveal it somehow. And now we progress to the R&D section. The fourth part of our discussion, from my point of view, is the most challenging one for patent analytics. It is very hard to do the proper selection of R&D proposals when all these proposals look so well elaborated at first glance and contain stunning return of investment, stunning project management, etc., and other project metrics. Companies' decision makers are often overwhelmed under the huge number of R&D proposals. And the problem is, almost all of them look flawless. How often companies see such proposals with 500 pages of it stating that if you don't invest in this brand new engine blade, your company will become uncompetitive in the next 3 years. So just give the proposal seeker 3 or 4 million euros and then wait patiently for 2 years to get this marvelous engine blade. Patent analytics should propose some kind of a mechanism to prioritize and select a handful of R&D proposals that are actually providing the meaningful impact on the company's technology development. Here, it will be very interesting for me to get the feedback from Anthony Tripp. Tony, you are involved in a huge number of activities in patent analytics with implementation of intellectual machine learning tools and other tools. Would you please comment on how people might deal with such problems with R&D proposals using advanced tool? Tony.
Thank you very much. And again, thank you so much for inviting me. It's a great pleasure and honor to be here for such a wonderful event and with such a distinguished selection of panelists. This is as you've mentioned, a very complicated question because you can come at it from a variety of different angles. And so I think I want to share a couple of different things in this particular regard. To begin with, I think there's something to be said for how do you decide what you're going to look at? All right. When you're talking about patent analytics, it isn't so much the case today, but a few years ago, maybe 5 to 10 years ago, there was a real issue with this idea of these huge reports. You would ask for a patent landscape report, and you would basically get hundreds and hundreds of pages with just charts and graphs and tremendous amounts of data. And there was probably some insight in there somewhere, but we used to joke around that some consultants get paid by the pound. And so the idea was that the supposed worth of the report was measured in how large the stack was or how heavy some people are smiling. And it's really sort of missing the point. And so the first thing I'd like to address is this idea of, well, what do you look for in any given project? When it comes to researching, say, for instance, a collection of potential R&D directions, all right? Well, there's a few things that you want to keep in mind. First off, of course, as has already been addressed, actually in the previous section, is the go-to-market opportunities. There's really not enough discussion perhaps, or enough time spent looking at the idea of profitability. I think most of us are aware that when you look at a company's product line, there are the so-called cash cows. These are the things that are highly profitable. And then there are, because there's a differentiation. And that differentiation is typically delivered by a technological benefit. And that technological benefit needs to be protected with patents. Versus things that are more of a commodity, things that are sold more on competitive pricing, in which case the profit margins shrink, and in which case the idea that you would invest a tremendous amount in the development of a patent portfolio to protect a market that is not terribly profitable in the first place is probably not money or time, for that matter, well spent. And so I think you begin with this idea of where is the profitability? And then you ask yourself the question, how do I differentiate myself? How do I provide for what one of my clients referred to as a signature experience? A Procter & Gamble vice president of mine once told us that Procter & Gamble invests in technologies that deliver a perceivable consumer benefit. Okay? So I think that was very, very profound. And this was literally 20, 25 years ago that we were talking about this. The idea is Procter & Gamble doesn't just invent new mint technology for toothpaste because it's time and money and people just sitting around. No, they recognize that people use Crest, for instance, because it delivers a signature experience through whatever capacity, whether it's the amount of foam that it generates, the how clean the mouth feels, how minty it feels, all of these perceptions about what the consumer believes delivers a superior experience. And a superior experience is something that they're willing to pay more for. And so, another way to talk about this is what are the technology choke points? What are the portions of this technology that you can't create those signature situations without that particular component? The classic example is looking at say, a mobile phone, especially the newer models that have touch screens and all that. I mean, there's literally tens of thousands of different components. So what do you look for? And well, what you look for is what is it that makes your product stand out? What is it that makes your product something that people are going to want to pay extra money for? What's going to increase your profit margin? And then you can start to say, well, those are the things that we want to invest in from a technology perspective. And I think that goes across the board, no matter what area it is that you happen to be working in, whatever area of R&D. The R&D organization needs to have a clear line of discussion or line of sight with the marketing people who are telling them specifically what it is that they can deliver in order to increase the profitability of the company. And then they can begin to look at, well, what sort of technologies do we need to invest in order to be able to deliver those signature results. And then it becomes a simple matter of prioritization that, well, all right, so we've broken this down. We think there are 5 different areas in here that are going to be able to deliver that sort of benefit, that the competitive advantage as well as you might think. And then you start to break that down into what is it precisely that I'm going to look for within those. And then you start to be able to create discrete patent landscape or patent analytics projects that are going to allow you to, when all is said and done, be able to relate to the business that, well, this is why this decision got made. This area might be more profitable and might be easier to implement, but there's a huge number of known competitors. There's a huge amount of disruption taking place, and it's one of these sort of patent thickets. It's going to be terribly difficult to find our own ability to create our own patentability because then there's also all these challenges to freedom to operate. So the idea that you would avoid something like that, even though it might be very profitable, can be explainable to somebody because you just basically say, look, we're going to end up being sued. We're going to end up not being able to get patents ourselves. We're going to end up facing knockoffs. So even if we have a small amount of time in profitability, it's going to be short-lived because it's going to disappear because people are going to be able to copy us. Meanwhile, this other approach we can lock down, maybe not be quite so great, but we combine it with something else. And now all of a sudden, we're right back there with a signature experience. And so, that's generally the way I talk to my clients about doing things like this. And it's a very pragmatic approach that incorporates the analytics along with a thorough discussion of the markets and the profitability of any given area.
Thank you, Tony. Marco, maybe you see some specifics based on your expertise, how the prioritization of R&D proposals could be made more robust and more effective.
Yeah, thank you very much. And indeed, patent analytics can support very well here. We have numerous examples of customers who, some of which use patent analytics to support their R&D stage gate processes in thousands of technology fields and subsequent decisions per year. So that's for one company only, thousands of assessments of potential R&D investments in various stages of the process. I would like to start first by connecting to what Jingquan, but also Irene and Tony mentioned about top management buy-in, data-driven decision-making, and the sequentiality, I think Irene said, that is lacking often in patent analytics, especially also when supporting these R&D processes, right? Tony also gave this great example of these big reports that are created at one point in time, whereas you really need more or less a monitoring of developments as also technological development is becoming more and more agile, just as modern software development is agile. We see that also in classic, for example, engineering approaches. So in order to support these decisions in R&D investments, we advise to do analyses of the respective technology fields. And as I said in the earlier conversation, what you really want to do is you want to assess the overall field with regards to the dynamics of the field. Is the field itself declining, or is it increasing? Is the technology in the area already highly concentrated across one or two players, or is there many, many small players still trying to find a solution to the problem? And are these solutions that are being sought, is there a diverse set, or is everybody more or less following similar approaches? And that can give you valuable insights into your own technological position or potential technological position, but also can lead you not only to a decision whether or not to continue to invest, but whether to continue in own R&D, but whether or not to buy, to partner. Are there suppliers already active in the area? Are our own customers maybe already active in the area? And are they becoming a potential threat, or could we do something to complement their efforts to make them buy more from us? In order to remind us all here also of the importance of patent analytics in the area of R&D decisions, I would like to cite Ash's 2017 paper in World Patent Information. It comes to the conclusion that 80% of the worldwide technological information can only be found in patents. So it's almost a no-go to make these decisions anymore without the support of patent analytics. But to my fellow speakers' point here, the process needs to change. It needs to be a partnering of the patent analytics function with the R&D functions and with the business decision makers in order to make this really effective and make this a proper decision-making tool for the respective decision makers. And what you ultimately need to do that is, of course, you need good data, garbage in, garbage out, right? If you want to support data-driven analytics and data-driven decision-making and want to create management buy-in, you need good data. That's absolutely table stakes, right? But you also need value-added data, and these value adds need to be open approaches. They can't be black boxes. Especially top management doesn't trust black boxes. Think of corporate reporting to the stock market, for example, and to shareholders. None of that can be a black box. Everything will be scrutinized. So these decisions, if they're made on data, they need to be made on transparent and open data. You also need to be able to provide trend analysis. Point-in-time data is a crucial factor here. And then last but not least, and as silly as it may sound, you need good and compelling visualizations, simple to understand, making data really simple to understand. Us patent experts, we feel really good reading individual documents and understanding them. And oftentimes you see patent experts who use the patent data almost as a wall to protect their area, so to speak, right? It's their area of expertise, and they're sort of proud almost that they can master this. But the real trick here is to bridge that gap between the ambiguity and the complexity of patent data and the world of business, and to support the decision makers. Hence, what I said before, the importance of value-added data, of good data, of transparency, and of point-in-time data is so important to support this process and to create acceptance and buy-in from decision makers. Thank you.
Thank you, Marco. And thank you for your contribution on this part. And with that, we are going to the final chapter of our session, making valuable insights using patent analytics. It is not a coincidence that this subject belongs to our final part, because it is one of the most manifold aspects regarding patent analytics. The theme should integrate various practices and approaches of conducting patent analytics research to solve different tasks. Iran, the WIPO activities are extending on a wide range of different research topics. By doing so, you often need to implement a lot of tools and cover the widest palette of patent analytics tasks. Would you please share your experience on how you and WIPO tend to use different instruments to find valuable insights in patent analytics? Irene?
Thank you very much, Oleg. So this is something indeed that we are trying to provide, and we often hear about speaking about insights. And I think there is a great challenge moving from the data findings and the analysis and turning this into real insights. So this may involve, in some cases, drilling into the results, comparing to non-patent data, which complete the picture. So what we have found through our experience, mainly with technology trends, is the power of the non-patent data, as in complementing the different creation of insights. We also found that depending on the technology area you're looking at, what you need to use either as indicators from the patents, but also on the non-patent data side, and the different approaches strongly varies and needs to be explored individually. When we're talking about starting with the technologies we heard just before the mention of the trends, like overall trends, we found that although there are different tools which may help in predefining what are the clusters to categorize and analyze the technology in, that the needs that need to be served with each project can vary. And the same thing, I'm sure, applies with the different companies in question, meaning that certain taxonomies may be helpful. We found, for instance, Some scientific literature classifications can be helpful. In some cases, even standards that classify products, even if we don't talk about technologies, may come close to patent classification schemes. So we believe that this is something that needs to be explored ad hoc, depending on the area you're working on, and be adapted to provide the insights and categorize the sub-technologies and subcategories of technologies in a way that makes sense to the company in question, if we were to talk about a company. We also feel that white space is also a viable type of analysis, either in the classical way or in the framework of new opportunities, which were mentioned in the first panel. The way that we see a certain technology develop can fit into companies' specializations or their portfolios or corporate strategy, but this may also change. We heard before the word diversification. So if this is the case, that needs to be seen not in the framework of the current business and corporate strategy, but also in the way that this may change. Some of the tools that we used and we found that can give a valuable contribute to the creation of insights is the correlation between patenting activity with a degree of technology readiness level, with impact assessments, with some foresight elements, which can help identify the other drivers in the development of a technology, and can help also in taking some decisions, because the way technology develops is one parameter, but technologies do not exist in a vacuum. So also the dynamics of competing technologies. We are currently working on 2 projects where we are following one on COVID and one on fuel cells, where we explore different ways of trying to get into these insights. And also it's important to see the interdependencies of certain technologies with others in the supply and value chain, which may need to be also looked at. When we look at about the players, we have seen in various projects the importance of understanding the real landscape of players. So there are different corporate trees and tools, but there may still be a need to further customize this corporate trees into the specific needs of a project or a company. So things that may not be visible on from the patent information side may be visible through co-filings or that is on the patent side, but on the M&A side or cooperation agreements, which may lead to be treated as one player. Tracking also small and corporate, either corporate or academic players can be, we found a useful indicator for deriving some insights and looking closer into the results. We also found that the active portfolios and how they evolve over time can also give valuable information on whether a company, certain players decide to just abandon a certain technology or a field, or how to or to move to other segments. We also found interesting the litigation information, and this may, on one side, create a case for or against, for instance, a company working with another player or acquiring or not a technology which may be considered important as it is being litigated, or this may have also been assessed through citation analysis or other methods. What we found very surprising to see was that the rankings that we have in our reports are used by the corporate world in litigation and antitrust cases to showcase market dominance, an effect that we were not really aware of when, and it was not, of course, part of the initial objective of the landscaping exercises. In terms of the patent portfolios, we have experimented with different tools which identify strengths, patent portfolio strengths with different factors like age, market share, the growth rates, etc. But we always find that there needs to be a lot of attention, and one needs to understand the tools, the weights, the factors that are being factored in, and see if this is appropriate for this specific application. Also, sometimes a caveat is that a certain observation we see may not be in line with, so the IP strategy may not be in line with the corporate strategy because of this disconnect we talked about before. So the approaches for getting insights will vary across. A lot of times it will imply and involve reviewing the actual claims to actually see what are the insights that come in. There are, of course, a lot of tools that can help either with conceptual analysis, semantic analysis. There are a lot of AI tools these days. But the idea is that all these are just elements that can contribute to the analyst building the insights and responding the question, so what? Which I think is very helpful in building insights. We find extremely important as well, and I would like to highlight the importance of involving the views of experts, also and beneficiaries, but also people who are involved in the market and understand the space, because that can give very valuable context to understand what we identify in the pattern analysis and the results, and have this context and turn this into insights in the analysis. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene. Tony, your company, Patent Informatics, has developed, as I know, a lot of initiatives in regard to the deep patent information research. Would you please provide some examples of valuable insights you use in your practice or some approach?
Absolutely. I think what I'll do here in this particular session is break this into two parts. To riff a little bit on what Irina shared and what you asked her initially, that's one of the most important things that I'm not sure is immediately obvious about doing patent analytics. And it's what I call the use of a mosaic. Oftentimes, analysts may point to a single piece of evidence and suggest that it is somehow indicative of what might occur in the future. All right. Now, the likelihood of this being the case or this being true is relatively small. All right. It's in the U.S. we have this expression. It's a crapshoot, which basically means the translation for that is that you're just rolling dice. All right, or you're flipping a coin. You're leaving things more or less almost to random chance. But the way you defend against that is that you come at a particular issue from a variety of different angles. And so, for instance, there's everybody is comfortable, everybody is familiar with count of patent families. All right, so that's a relatively, there's not a lot of debate as to whether or not that's particularly important. You can augment that, though, by looking at the total count of patent families over time, because now that adds an additional variable and it adds an additional wrinkle or additional insight beyond, well, they just have a big stack. Well, okay, but that big stack hasn't grown in the last 5 years. It was something that was primarily developed 6, 7, 10 years ago, whatever it might be. And so it's no longer particularly relevant. And then on top of that, you start adding additional mechanisms of analysis and subsequent visualization, like perhaps a spatial concept map. That we've all seen these. They look like golf courses. They look like topological maps. But they allow you to do a very nice visual comparison between the portfolios of two different companies, and to say, well, clearly we can see that company A is over in the upper right-hand corner and company B is in the lower left-hand corner, and there's not particularly much overlap. That provides insight and another piece of evidence to support an eventual conclusion. And then one of my favorites is a subsequent citation analysis of some type. And so, this idea of creating a citation network analysis is one that I find very, very powerful, because that even gives you the idea of who's the most influential. And it's not always the biggest patent holder that is actually the most influential. And so, when you start to look at a variety of different pieces of evidence, and you start to put together a more comprehensive picture or a mosaic based on multiple pieces, I think a clearer picture begins to develop. And so I'll share. Now, some of you have heard this story because I've told this story lots and lots of times, but it's a really great one. And it's the one I can tell because it was a case study. I didn't do this for a client. But I would do this all the time for Procter & Gamble. I do this all the time for my clients currently. And that's particularly with regards to portfolio development and subsequent mergers and acquisitions or partnerships that might take place to support portfolio development. And so this is the story that I've told many times about Jawbone versus Fitbit. And when I first looked at that particular example, this was just as the patent wars over the iPhone were taking place between Samsung and Apple. And I began to think about, well, what's the next big area that people are going to fight about and that patents are going to become important? And I sort of zeroed in on the idea of fitness trackers, and so portable fitness bands. And there were a number of players at the time, but a couple of the small and up-and-coming companies were Jawbone and Fitbit. And so I took a look at their portfolios, and frankly, I was shocked. I just absolutely floored at how horrible their portfolios were. For a variety of different reasons, they just did not have much in the way of these technology choke points that I mentioned in the previous section. And they just didn't have very much breadth and depth. They didn't have much in the way of international coverage. So all these boxes that we tick with regards to developing a potent portfolio or one that's fit for purpose to protect market share going forward just weren't there. And so the idea that I suggested at the time was they both needed to buy patents from others. It was a little late in the game to start completely organically developing a portfolio. And so it was time for them to look elsewhere. And so I started to look around at the area, and I looked at patent counts. I did a spatial concept map. I looked at the forward citations, and what emerged was that there were three companies that looked to me to be very, very interesting with regards to potential acquisition. And the foremost of those was Body Media for a variety of different reasons, mostly the influence of their patent portfolio through citation analysis, but also the amount of time remaining, the number of cases that were open for continued prosecution. So you could write new patents based on the existing specifications, very, very important for developing a portfolio that you can use. And then interestingly, I mean, it's sort of funny, I chuckle about it. I was actually in Sri Lanka, and I was telling this particular story to at a workshop. And one of the participants came up to me later, and they said, well, you didn't mention anything about the fact that Jawbone bought Body Media. And I said, what are you talking about? And they said, well, yeah, just a few weeks ago, there was announced that they bought them. And so I went and I looked, and sure enough, basically 2 weeks after I had initially presented this analysis, one of the companies I was talking about and suggested that they needed to be buying patents bought the company that I thought was the best acquisition target. Okay. Now, again, this is no accident. I've done this a half dozen times, at least and it was part of what I did with the quantum computing report. The quantum computing report is interesting. Most people concentrate on the US versus China, but I think it's much more interesting to look at, the role that Raytheon is going to play going forward, the role that Northrop Grumman is going to play going forward. It's not just Google, D-Wave, Microsoft, and IBM, and now Honeywell and Intel. But I think some of these other players are going to be playing a significant role and are likely going to be acquisition targets as the area begins to consolidate. And so the role of patent analytics in determining these sorts of moves can't be understated. It's really powerful. It works really, really well. And I think most business leaders who are really looking for a competitive advantage understand that they should be taking advantage of patent analytics to go ahead and find that.
Thank you, Tony. Cyril, in lots of your consulting projects at Castell, you're always face the challenge in finding valuable insights and hidden data. What can you say about it and the Castell approach working with patent information?
Yes, thanks, Oleg. So yes, indeed. First question is why patent analytics works so well for different purposes. Because patent data comprise very rich information that cannot be found elsewhere. It presents intrinsic characteristics that make it very valuable. A strong formalism, whatever the country, making the data consistent and especially easily searchable by human or machines and analyzable by machine software and so on. Also, a common language, as almost all patents are automatically translated in English if they weren't from the beginning. But also a third-party examination of the novelty and inventiveness, and information about the willing of the assignee to keep its patent alive, and so on. So it's very, very valuable and unique. And even if patent data is like a video of the past with also an invisible time gap between a few months and 18 months, it's also an anticipation of the future and of the inventions that could reach the market. Thus, first valuable information is related to the inventions themselves and their related details. So technical details, examples of realization into the patent, date of invention, but also information regarding the assignees. So who work on what, with which amount of effort, with which dynamic, where the R&D is based, who are the inventors, and the list could be longer. But also information regarding the closeness between different inventions, information regarding the market countries, and not to forget the legal dimension, meaning, for instance, what is the technological space that players want to make their property, which technologies are already in the public domain, and are there patents blocking a whole field with one or several patents together. So that's why patent analytics can serve a lot of different goals. So you already mentioned lots of them, of course. So first one, identify technologies which can translate into different business goals. So find inventors to hire, scout available technologies, or even a research partner to accelerate its own development. But also identify companies to acquire, identify recent startups that are still not visible on the market, also identify key opinion leaders thanks to patent and other source of information. There is also a goal related to how to provide market orientation to your own company. So what are the R&D and market countries for one technology? Are there hidden application for my technology? That's what we have discussed at the beginning of this workshop. Patents data can also be used to identify space where there is no patent data. This is called the white space to enable new development for a company. So even the absence of data is interesting. And of course, within a modern company, which was part of the question, patent analytics is also a way to benchmark its own practices and portfolio with competitors to better serve companies' objectives. So first, do I protect the right countries? Is the size of my portfolio consistent with my company's objective and turnover? It also enables to identify patents to identify your own strengths and weaknesses, and also opportunities and threats. And from that, you can define your IP strategy and your IP roadmap. I mean, how can I build the right portfolio to support my business? How can I secure my market shares and prevent my company from competition? And also, this is another aspect, analyzing its own portfolio also enables you to reduce costs and use this money to invest into another patent budget. Invest your patent budget in a more efficient protection for your portfolio. This is a patent pruning. So I have plenty of examples of companies which reoriented their business thanks to patent analytics. And just to mention one, there was a startup in 3D printing. One business goal was to enter the US market with existing features for everyone. Patent analytics for this company enabled to understand that the US was already a saturated, crowded patent area with especially a couple of old companies which use some of their old but principal patents to sue every new company entering the US. So they exhausted companies with very long and expensive lawsuits before, when the companies were in really bad position, negotiate an acquisition for a very low price and thus acquiring their own their patent portfolio and having still more patent to sue new companies. So knowing that, and after having identified that there were blocking patent for them, the startup definitely changed its market strategy and targeted European market instead. And I also would like to mention another example to jump on what Irins mentioned about antitrust rule, because we also have the experience of one client using patent analytics to show that an aggressive offer of acquisition of their own company will create an antitrust situation if they were acquired. So they use this, the result of this patent analytics project to make their case in front of the European Commission. And to conclude, we can wonder if patent analytics is so valuable for business, and that everyone say that since for the 2 last hours, why companies don't use it more often. So I think there are 2 main issues. The first one is that most of IP departments don't use patent analytics. In fact, they deal with patent information the whole day, but not in that way with their with business goals. It's not their job actually. And the second one, but this also explains the first point, is that the position which is given to the IP department within company. They are linked to R&D department, of course, but not often enough to business development, to the COEX, to innovation teams. And thus, IP departments are not fully aware of the business strategy of their own company, of the potential new orientation that could help them to be able to provide a new insight. And the correlation is that on the other side, business development or innovation people, they often don't know the power of patent analytics that their own department could offer. And those 2 situations, it's also why such a conference and current exchanges today are so important. And thank you, Oleg, for organizing this session, because it's very interesting, and I hope a lot of people will see it. Thank you.
Thank you, Cyril. And we are moving to our closing part of our session. I would like to say a big thank you to all the debaters and audience for this intensive and fruitful discussion. I would like to mention that Professor Kadzikawa kindly offered me to be a co-editor of a special issue in the Frontiers and Research Metrics and Analytics journal. And we will set the key theme of this special issue around the current session. But we also will be waiting the papers from the whole patent analytics community, focusing a lot of various patent analytics topics: methodologies, best cases, life cycle of patent analytics implementation, instrumental tools, specific algorithms, whatever other topic. So we kindly invite all interested to publish a manuscript in this special issue, and I think it could be a valuable information asset that could help consolidate the modern tendencies of patent analytics evolution. The key message from our session that I get and I have been thinking about it for a long time, patent analytics should be more proactive and play a more significant role in science, technology, and innovation policy making. By that I mean patent analytics should be used of full value and become a full-fledged actor when we initiate, carry out R&D and other projects and help to commercialize products. From my point of view, it's a proper time to possibly integrate efforts in such an extensive subject together and share our expertise and knowledge, because I think it would be beneficial for all of us and the patent analytics community, as we all here today have various meaningful activities in the centers of competence all over the world. Here in Project Office FIPS, we have already done more than 60 projects, and it will be great for us to validate the key approaches that we use with the worldwide patent analytics community. We are thinking now about possibly establishing a patent analytics advisory board so we can get the methodological support and validate our corporate patent analytics on an annual basis. We will be honored if patent analytics practitioners from different countries could join the advisory board, so it could serve to effort and approach consolidation in this regard. Also, we could discuss the further activities for knowledge gathering and consolidation, and other topics like knowledge formalization, knowledge engineering, etc. Maybe we could propose some knowledge formalization tools and techniques to create and maintain the robust and comprehensive knowledge repository and/or thesaurus for the future collective usage. I would ask debaters to briefly comment on these two topics. First topic is advisory board. What do you think about it? And the second topic is some consolidation around knowledge gathering and formalization, both methodologically and technically. In 2 minutes reaction, please, Jin-Kwan, if you have something to say about these topics, could you share your thoughts on the idea of such possible cooperation?
Thank you, Oleg. Wonderful initiative, and certainly we would love to be part of it. And certainly we would love to exchange ideas, methodologies with our fellow practitioners in this area. I think as Irene mentioned, WIPO has certain collection of indicators, for example. We'll be very happy to find out more in terms of how we can actually use it for our own purpose. And certainly we also like to share with all of you some of the methodologies that are unique to us and some of the use cases that we have been accumulated over the years. As for the advisory board, certainly we would be very happy if we can be part of it. Again, it would help to facilitate knowledge exchange and also to maybe raise the awareness of patent analytics at a global level. Thank you.
Thank you, Jin-Kwan. Yuya, what do you think about it?
Yeah, it is somehow surprising to know that there is no dedicated journal, academic journal on patent analytics. So I recently launched a new journal on patent analytics as a part of Frontiers in Research Metrics and Analytics. So I and co-edited a special issue relating to this workshop. So the journal is just a nascent stage of development. So I would like to collect the practitioner's perspective in addition to the original research articles. So your comments or perspective paper will encourage and stimulate the worldwide researchers in patent analytics and contribute to the development of our community, I believe. So I'd like to continue our discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Yuya. Irene, what do you think?
Oleg, I find this is a very good idea. Actually, as you know, we're also considering next year to we will be launching a a community of practice, we really feel we are very fully aligned on the need of the practitioners getting together and exchanging views. We have seen a lot of very valuable experiences that can be exchanged and complemented upon. And I think we should all support each other because, as we heard earlier today, there are a lot of challenges in getting the message through and the importance and the value add of patent analytics. So having a strong community is something that we want to support in any way we can. So we would be very pleased to participate. Similarly, we believe that finding a way of consolidating the knowledge gathering is also very important because there are bits and pieces of information. There are fewer systematic approaches, but what you mentioned before about data set taxonomies, etc., they're all things that involve a lot of intellectual effort. So we believe there must be a centralized, a go-to place and a way that we can know where to reach out to rather than trying to look for information across the internet. So that would be something I think that we would really like to see.
Thank you, Ren. Cyril, your thoughts, please.
Yes. I also think this is a wonderful initiative indeed. There is clearly a lack of information about the goals of patent analytics and also the way to perform such kind of study. So it would be perfect to share all of this methodologies, tools, how to interpret the data, how to present to business people what we have found. As Tony said before, just provide an answer to question and not a report of 200 pages. It has no interest for anyone. So all of this is completely true. We also must be very careful not to stay within patent analytics professionals in our small group because we will improve our practice for sure, but we definitely need to communicate to the non-professional community about. So we need to do it not in a way that people will think we promote what we do, but more in a way to transfer methodologies, transfer our best practices, and also, as we did before, explain all the business goals or the interest of patent analytics. So we also would be very, very happy to participate to such initiatives.
Thank you, Cyril. Marco, what do you think?
Yeah, thank you, Oleg. As my fellow colleagues here said, I as well would be very supportive of both initiatives. And I must say, it both follow the core interest of the patent system as well. If you think about it, it's all about sharing knowledge with the world in exchange for something. Now, in this case, we're not seeking exclusivity on a certain invention, but we're quite the opposite. We're looking to share best practices. And as we've heard today, there's a lot of common knowledge among this group. And if you think about the diversity of this group, from both an organizational but also geographical and in background perspective, it's amazing to see how similar the approaches are, yet there's so much to learn from each other, right? So I think this is a wonderful approach, Oleg. Thank you for bringing this forward and absolutely supportive of it.
Thank you, Marco. Tony, your turn.
Yeah, I was going to say something. I concur that it's pretty amazing looking around, and we're talking about China, Japan, Singapore, Switzerland, France, Germany, United States. It's rare to see such international cooperation, and I think that that's critical in Russia, of course, and so absolutely. I mean, whether advisory board or even just a community of practice or a means by which knowledge can be shared. I thought I'd mention very briefly, because I really truly believe in this very, very strongly, enough so that when it came to the idea of machine learning, and machine learning for searching as well as strategic analysis, and for other parts of the IP practice, I put together machine learning for patents.com, and there's a webinar series that I'm doing that's showcasing all of the different approaches to using machine learning in patent practice particularly, but IP in general. And so the development of these sorts of resources or these sorts of places, I think is really critical. But getting them started and keeping the momentum moving forward on them and getting them supported can be a real challenge. And in that regard, I think all of us owe a great deal of thanks to WIPO for the amount of resource and the impetus and the drive from years ago to put together the landscape reports that they've done, to put together the websites that they've done, for actually putting the resources together to develop the guidelines for the preparation of patent landscape reports, the follow-on open source manual, and all the work that went into that. And so it would be wonderful to see some of the other patent offices around the world follow suit in providing resources and representation, and perhaps even funding to help keep this all moving forward.
Thank you, Tony. Lei, and your thought, please.
Yes, I think shared idea and cooperation is really important for the patent analysis because I already do patent analysis almost 20 years. In 20 years, we translate the book from the Georgia Tech, Professor Alan Porter. We introduce software from the South Korea, from the United States, from the UK. So I think the shared idea and cooperation is really important. Just in 2020, 1.5 million patent application filed in the IPA. So I think in China, there's a great need for the patent analysis. So I think that is a very good proposal, and we will fully cooperate with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Lei. I should mention fully collaborate. Thank you. And now I think that is definitely it. A big and warm welcome from Russia to everyone who took part in our discussion and to everyone who watched it remotely. And from my side, special and dedicated thank you all for the proper time checking. We are good in time and ahead of schedule for 8 minutes. Let's keep in touch and hopefully meet in such cool conditions like it often. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you for the invitation as well.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thanks for the invitation.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hasta
Thank you. Bye-bye.
again.
Bye.